You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek with Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
But we got to talk a little bit about something we talked about earlier, and that is what's going on in terms of some of the Chinese names that trade here in the United States, and more news out of China specifically in the last 24 hours to really help prop up that economy.
Yeah, Beijing stepping up support toward the economy by issuing additional sovereign debt, raising the budget deficit ratio. It comes at a time when China and the Chinese economy face major challenges. We've got a property crisis. I mentioned the sluggish economy. Also, Carol, increased scrutiny of the country's relationships with adversaries of many countries in the West, such as Russia.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. So let's get to it with Shehzad Qazi. He's Chief Operating Officer and Managing Director of the China Beige Book International, which calls itself the largest private in-country data collection network ever developed to track the Chinese marketplace. He joins us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. So nice to have you here. I guess, first of all, China, and we've talked a lot about it, I feel like, in the last couple of days, just trying to figure out what's going on. And it's always kind of interesting, the relationships President Xi has with other leaders against the geopolitics that are going on. Having said that, we did see the Nasdaq Golden Dragon China Index staging its biggest rally, I think the biggest move since July of this year. So what he did, spell it out for us and whether it was significant in your view, based on the data points that you track.
Yeah, I think what we saw overnight with the issuance of the sovereign debt is more of
$1 trillion
a confidence.
worth, was it? Trillion yuan?
That's right. It's about $150 billion or so. And the number is meant to boost confidence more than anything else. The Chinese GDP target for the year was not under threat. And after the third quarter results that came out, China's own GDP numbers and, of course, what China Beige Book data had been showcasing the whole time, it was pretty clear that they're going to hit their GDP target. But what, of course, you have going on in China is that the stock market has been essentially in free fall, and that is what the party is trying to push back against through several mechanisms. And I think this is supposed to go and alleviate investor confidence and business confidence to a certain degree.
Is it going to be effective, though? I mean, and then how much money is that actually when it comes to the greater scheme of things?
In the grander scheme of things, the budget deficit that they've expanded by is not that much. They were going to actually exceed that in any event. And the money is going towards very targeted things like infrastructure as it relates to water conservancy.
Kind of seen this movie before.
That's right.
Shehzad, so the move, was it for outside investors versus not really about concerns at home? Was it more about, because I feel like what's happening right now is folks outside investors aren't quite sure what's going on in China. And so it's tough to make some investment bets, particularly when it comes to Chinese names.
Yeah, I would say it's towards both. It's certainly to, shore up confidence at home. But we've, as you said, seen this movie before. China plays up the headlines and the party plays up the stimulus headlines pretty frequently when it feels like it needs to shore up external confidence.
He did go to the PBOC, though. Was that significant? Or again, was that just for kind of the cameras?
No, I think it's...
I'm saying that, I don't know that there really were cameras on it, but you know what I mean.
I think it's part of, as they set up the rollout. I don't think there's anything specifically significant about the PBOC. As we know, of course, the PBOC does more or less take directives from the party. It is not an independent central bank like the Fed or
But that
others.
he physically went there.
I think it's just a show of it's a policy move, and then they're doing it in a significant venue. I don't think it means much more than that.
So you have a lot of data. That's like what you do. You
open your book for us.
And that's really why we want to have you on the program. Do you think that there is a case to be made with confidence that investors outside of China should be getting involved, not just in Chinese companies, but making investments in China right now?
Taking a step back, Tim, what I would say is all year long, one of the things that you've seen is that the market's views on where China is versus what's actually happening inside the economy has been completely disconnected.
Explain.
But more recently, what has happened, so what I mean by that is the economy has actually been slowly and sequentially recovering. The problem is it's a very lackluster sort of recovery. It's a boring recovery, and markets don't like that. Markets had very big expectations for 2023. So what you've seen play out, in equities and so forth, is a reaction to that disappointing recovery. There's no to the moon taking place.
But do we need to kind of readjust our expectations with China? It is not necessarily the emerging market that it was several decades ago. And so in terms of moving the needle or to move the needle, it's such a massive economy now that do we need to, the smart thing is a reset in terms of its growth? Or is it just that they're stuck right now?
No, absolutely. Resetting the thinking, I think, is going to be very key.
Forever?
Forever, absolutely, because we are no longer looking at a China that is growing at that rapid pace that everybody had decided would happen forever and ever. The Chinese government has itself come to terms with the fact that they're going to grow at a slower pace. They're more interested in growing at in a healthier way than investment driven and high loads of debt. They've given that up. They've even given up growth targets, by the way, something that markets probably never thought would happen.
Well, and one of the things I wanted to bring up with you is, we have this great story by our Bloomberg News team out of China about Country Garden, and it's entitled "Country Garden's Crisis Upending Tens of Thousands of Lives." Default is all but official at one of China's largest developers. We've been talking about this a lot. That's intensifying the pain for struggling home buyers, workers, and investors just when the economy most needs a boost. Will there be more Country Gardens going forward? I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of money, time, energy, effort, and the expectation of what this was supposed to do, right, for the Chinese economy and what it stood for. And I'm trying to understand its collapse is massive. And I don't know, do you liken it to, I don't know, is it their financial, what do you liken it to in other parts of our market cycles globally?
As I think the party decided to deflate the property bubble, and they very much took this decision on their own, they started this, the clock on a range of companies eventually defaulting. This is very much intended. And I think over the next couple of years, maybe even 3 years, you will see lots of mini crises happen in the property market along the way. We've seen some of the big ones take place. We've got some other developers that are on pretty shaky ground as well. The concern, of course, at the end of the day for policymakers in China is not to look out for the bottom line of foreign investors or even the executives of this company. The people they will look to protect will be the home buyers, the folks who have put their savings in these apartments that they never, they wouldn't have seen anywhere for years and years.
Or they're never built, right?
And have not been built. Getting them those homes is going to, I think, take precedence over anything else.
What do you think is the risk to the party in all of this?
I think the party is very much secure in its position. Yes, they have chosen to alter that social contract they had a little bit. There's no such thing as high rates of growth in exchange of political loyalty support, whatever you want to call it. What they're promising is healthy rates of growth, a China that is going to become a leader on the global stage, a major technological economy,
right,
in exchange for that political support now.
But it's interesting because it leads President Xi, and Tim and I have talked about this, right? The meeting between Xi and Russian President Vladimir Putin. And what's interesting is I think about, will it lead Xi and China to alliances that are complicated and tricky, right? Because they're going to get energy, they're going to get oil, which they need in a big way, fossil fuels, if you will. But I do wonder about the complications that come with that. And does it increasingly kind of cut itself off from the rest of the world? And is that okay? Or is there going to be problems with that for China specifically?
I think, the party certainly, and Xi certainly does not want to be cut off from the world. If anything, they're trying to stay as interconnected as possible. We're the ones trying to put some export controls on them and such. And
on the tech side of things.
On the tech side of things. It is a tough balancing act. The Ukraine war was certainly something that Xi did not want to see play out, and it has led to a lot of embarrassment, considering a big ally of China now looks very weak and beaten down. So yes, those sorts of problems are going to continue, to kind of bother the party. Look at what's going on in the Middle East right now. They don't want to see more war. They've got entanglements everywhere. They've got commercial relationships with Israel. They've got alliances with Iran and so forth. So walking that, it's a tightrope walk that the party's on right now.
But is it a tightrope when it comes to China's relationship with the rest of the world, outside of Russia, outside of North Korea? I'm talking about the U.S., I'm talking about Europe, because at the end of the day, Shehzad, a lot of the world is still relying on China for a lot of its goods.
Yeah, absolutely is. Just look at our own companies alone. Apple cannot produce iPhones without China. That's just the bottom line. And many other companies, we remain very much dependent on China. It's a critical part of almost everything supply chain related, including critical supply chains, pharmaceuticals, and so forth. You can't just cut off that relationship, and I don't think it's going to happen.
All right, so give us an idea. It's funny, I was just pulling up some of the headlines from China, and it's like China's record copper production signals resilient demand. China rattles foreign firms with new arrests and Foxconn, and a probe into Foxconn. So a strategic partner, number one partner with Apple. So it's
and a company based in Taiwan.
And a company based in Taiwan. So the back and forth of, okay, good. Okay, wait, I don't get this. How do you read that and kind of try and make sense of it?
Point number one is that we remain in a prolonged period of regulatory and political uncertainty. Anytime somebody says the political uncertainty is coming to an end, I think they're going to be wrong, and for several years. So it'll continue to shift. That's, I think, point number one.
Globally, you're talking about Chinese political uncertainty.
Within China, as we think about crackdowns, regulation, it is all evolving. China is figuring out.
Ousted another top minister in the government.
That's exactly right. So Xi is continuing to change the face of the party, the leadership of the party, but also how they treat private companies, how they think about rules and regulations around data, etc. All that is still being decided, which means a lot of uncertainty for investors.
It's interesting to see, like we talked about all the financial titans that are over in Saudi Arabia. It's a big investment conference, and it's just interesting the focus over there. And I do wonder, in terms of China, do global multinationals, is it still the land of opportunity that it once was, or is it different?
China has greatly disappointed expectations for businesses, but they are not necessarily packing up and leaving. That story gets a lot of play. What business executives want to do is try to push back and convince the party and convince Xi to be as business friendly as they can possibly get them. They have not thrown in the towel.
What makes you say that?
Well, look at the number of engagements that have gone on just since the lifting of the COVID-0 lockdowns. And you've had a number of not only senior American officials, but lots of business representatives and lots of major CEOs who've gone over there, and they continue to build and try to strengthen their relationship with the party. They are not willing to call it quits on this relationship.
I believe there's some trade officials from China actually in Washington as we speak, or at least today. Last couple of thoughts in terms of, I'm thinking about our audience, who we talk about China so much. Tim knows I'm a little obsessed with it.
I mean, we have to. It's the second largest economy in the world.
Thank you. Like, how can we not? So what are the data points that you think folks and investors should focus on when it comes to China and investment opportunities?
Yeah, I think get mentally prepared for a sub 5% GDP over the next several years. So the real question is, what parts of the economy are they able to successfully support? Are they getting credit out to private firms? Are they getting credit out to SMEs? Are they making it easier for those companies to grow and invest and hire?
SME is state-managed enterprises?
Small and medium enterprises. And if that's not happening, that's the real bad China story, because that is the future. Now, China's structural problems cannot be solved without private companies, new economy companies, hiring more, expanding, getting bigger.
Does China ever surpass the U.S. in terms of size of the economy, in terms of GDP?
I've always been very skeptical of those estimates. I remain skeptical. There's I think a pretty good chance that does not happen.
With all this in mind, Taiwan, do you think China would ever do something in terms of Taiwan?
The timeline on that, I think, is in President Xi's mind, which makes it very difficult to decipher. I think Taiwan will very much be in play. Look, in 5 years, we might be looking at, say, maybe even a 60% chance, 70% chance that they make a move. I think it's an evolving situation, and it's going to be very hard to predict.
I think about President Biden, right, in his address to the nation, and he tied aid to Ukraine, Israel, and then talked about Taiwan specifically. So tying it all up. Shehzad, thank you so much. Really a lot going on, and we really appreciate it. Shehzad Qazi, Chief Operating Officer, Managing Director of China Beige Book International, joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio.
Good stuff. It's good to see you, Shehzad, too. I mean, we've talked to you on the phone a few times over the last few years, but I don't think we've seen you Gosh, I haven't seen Shehzad in since pre-pandemic.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's probably 2018, 2019.
No,
so
Finally getting out.
yeah, it's good to see you.
It does feel good. We're still listen, the pandemic, the impact, the era,
Yeah.
the amount of stimulus. We're just all kind of finding our way off of that. All right, don't go anywhere. Carol Massar, Tim Stenovec, lots more to come right here on Bloomberg Radio. Well, U.S. forces thwarting an attempted assault by two one-way attack drones on their base at Al-Tanf in Syria. That was happening on Monday, and this came from a Defense Department spokesman talking to reporters at the Pentagon. The spokesman calling it part of an increase in attempted attacks and harassment. Drones are really a part of warfare right now.
Yeah, we've also seen news that Israel has intercepted drones from Lebanon, and this in addition to the drones that were used in the initial October 7th Hamas terrorist attack that set off the war that has now entered its third week, Carol.
All right, the commonality here is, like we've been talking about, drones, pilotless and remote controlled, and increasingly being used in military conflict or conflict of all sorts, it seems. Dr. Allan Evans is Chief Operating Officer at Red Cat. It's a company that provides data storage, analytics, and services for the drone industry. Teal Drones, one of Red Cat's subsidiaries, provides unmanned aerial system solutions. So you're talking about drones.
Just another term for drones.
To the U.S. government. We inform around here. To the U.S. government, and Red Cat's products are being used in current combat zones. He joins us on Zoom from Puerto Rico. It's a publicly held company, by the way, about a $53 million market cap. Dr. Evans, nice to have you here with us. Tell us a little bit more, first of all, about your company and who is using it.
Absolutely. Thank you for the time. Our company is Red Cat. We'll mostly talk about our subsidiary Teal. We make what is a manned portable drone in the USA. It's on the government-approved list. It's called Blue UAS, or Blue Drone List, which means the government's certified it for purchase by the military. It's being used not just by militaries, but also by the Border Patrol and others, and it's different than some of the airplane-style one-way attack drones.
You're talking when the difference is, the one-way attack drones are like the UAVs that have been around for years that are piloted by, pilots on joysticks and are actually used to, attack things, right? You're talking about it. Tell us about what your drone does.
Absolutely. So our drone will fly up. We make the best nighttime drone, and you carry it out. So if you're at the front lines, you fly it up and you'd look, and maybe you'd find a tank or something else. And this is typically how it's being used in Ukraine, is in the artillery style. And then a one-way drone, like a Switchblade or a missile, would get the coordinates fed back and come in and hit the target. And then our drone would also confirm what occurred with the target. And because most military actions occur at night, the thermal camera that we ship is extremely important to this.
So we have a supply chain function at the Bloomberg, which we love, which talks about what we have figured out are your suppliers and then what are some of your customers. And as you would guess, the United States government is obviously a big customer of you guys. Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol. How much of your work is done specifically right here in the United States?
Oh, pretty much all of it. We have an amazing facility in Salt Lake that we built out over the last 2 years. We're ramping volumes. We're seeing a lot of purchase orders. And then a lot of thanks to actually the US politicians on both sides of the aisle for passing laws to use federal dollars to help reinvest in America. The Replicator Initiative and some of the other things that are ongoing, like the American Securities Drone Act, are a follow-up to almost the CHIPS Act, where drone conflict has shown the importance of securing these technology bases. We're really seeing government, both Republicans and Democrats, following through with new legislation and new parameters to help support it.
Talk to me about how difficult
we should say that legislation is bipartisan, and it bans federal agencies from buying and operating Chinese-made drones.
Can these drones be available to consumers also?
Yeah, they can. Our particular category is really a professional category. It has a high-end FLIR camera, and it's used to mostly fly at night, where a lot of consumers want to go take photographs at a wedding or something else. And so it doesn't fit as well, but we see power departments and stuff use them.
How do you make sure that it doesn't get in the hands of the wrong folks?
We go through all of the ITAR and other paperwork and validation of the buyers and everything else that are necessary to be sure we're not selling to the wrong parties.
But I could buy one essentially and then sell it on the black market, right?
You could. Anybody can find workarounds for one or two, but it's much harder to find a workaround for 100 or 200.
What I'm curious too is, we're thinking a lot about warfare and what's going on in the Middle East, and if this expands size and scope. And we certainly seem, in terms of some of the conversations, it seems like many are indicating, or some are indicating, that this is going to go on for longer than we anticipated and get wider. Again, it's just views and opinions, and we will see actually how it ultimately plays out. Having said that, the role of drones generally in our world, for civilian uses, for military uses, for government uses, what are you seeing on that front, generally speaking, and that might surprise our audience?
Conflict normally accelerates technology innovation. So if you look, for instance, delivering a payload, a lethal payload, is not that different than delivering a burrito. You're just willing to accept more risk in combat. So we're seeing a lot of robotics conflict come about now, but that's really driving the technologies and the innovations, and driving the FAA even, who's moving faster than ever with rulemaking into Part 108 to look at multi-vehicle control and delivery and all the other things. It reminds me of jets. World War II jets just showed up, but by the 1970s, we were all flying them commercially.
So that raises a really good question that I have, which is a question that I've actually posed to airline executives in the past. Mm-hmm. Do you think within our lifetimes, we will be flying on airplanes that don't actually have pilots in the cockpit, but instead are powered or are controlled by people on the ground?
I absolutely believe that. And they might not be controlled by people on the ground. They may even be autonomous. And I think we'll see giving over that agency to robots about the same time we really start to collectively ride in self-driving cars as a society.
So we mentioned you are kind of a small market cap company. What's the prospect for your business growing? I'm just curious. It's a $52 million market cap company. It's below $1. And we, wanted to pick your brain about kind of the technology, but I am curious, do you go it alone? Do you become a tack on an acquisition for someone?
I think we build great products for our customer and find out where it goes. We just launched the Teal 2, which is the drone we're talking about, right around May 1st. We did 1.7 million in that quarter. We're just about the end of quarter 2. We've given guidance that we're going to do 3. Next quarter, we expect to do 5 million in revenue. This is all covered by POs we already have. So we're really just trying to build the best product for the customer and grow really quickly. We think the next 5 to 10 years have an opportunity for explosive growth as the technology has been identified as vital. The US government is supporting it, and I think consumer awareness is there. So I think we go as hard and fast as we can right now, and then find out where it lands in a while. And I'm extremely excited about the prospect. This is the best growth opportunity I've ever seen, and I started in venture.
Allan, so having said that, roll into the impact or potential impact. I know you guys have done some AI partnerships. How does AI fit into what you guys are doing going forward, and also your growth trajectory?
That's a great thought. AI is super interesting because originally you had to fly the drone like an airplane. Mm-hmm. And then DJI came along a little while ago, and you sort of told it where to go, but it would hover. So, up, down, left, right, but all the flight controls it did automatically. AI starts to let you abstract it one more layer, where you could say, hey, follow that person, or hey, fly to this destination and then land. And so I think AI is a complement that starts to allow us to tell drones what to do rather than actively control them. And that lets us start to do things where one person can control 4, 8, or 16 drones to achieve these really incredible, unpredicted outcomes.
It's fascinating, right? And just the amount of technology and innovation going on, affecting so many aspects of our world.
I want to fly one.
We have one at home. We're still learning.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Do you fly it?
No, not yet.
Did you just get it? Is this from
relatively
the
new.
sailboat?
Yeah.
That is so cool.
But we're learning. We
jealous.
don't want to lose it. Dr. Allan Evans, thank you so much. Chief Operating Officer at Red Cat, joining us on Zoom from Puerto Rico. Interesting world. This is Bloomberg.